object working list, because that was one of the questions on the quiz yesterday. So I'm just going to open up some object records here. And I believe the question was, a user can share their object working list with other users. It was like a true or false question. And that is actually false. We're not able to share our working lists, right? They're personal just to us, right? So I have my own object working list here. I'm not able to, tell another user, hey, go look at my object working list when you log into TMS collections, right? It's personal just to each individual user. So again, when we're at that point where we need to create lists of object records that we might need to share with other people, we do want to make packages for that instance instead. So just keep that in mind about the object working list. It's really just personal for you as your own individual user. Still waiting on a couple more people. Any other questions?
So there's a question, and this might be kind of beyond normal training, but will there be automatic backups made regularly? And I can tackle it if you don't.
Yeah, I don't know what that schedule looks like.
So it is hosted on the AWS cloud, and yes, that will be backed up regularly with metrics on restoration and all of that, so that if there's, a catastrophic, issue, that the data is preserved somewhere else and is automatically restored in a timely fashion. But there will be no need for you to make local backups of your data, for your IT people to have access to the system. They won't be able to get to the back end, that sort of thing. That'll all be handled centrally and off-site.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, I think we have most people here right now, so I'm going to go ahead and start today. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about archives. I just moved that from yesterday's agenda to today. And then we'll look at the batch update tool. That was something we didn't get to yesterday, but we'll cover that today. And then we'll look at media, uploading media, looking at records actually in the media module, and using a couple of tools related to media that are available. And then in the afternoon, we will spend time looking at the exhibitions module and the loans module. So looking at how we look at some of your existing records that have come over in migration to those modules, but also making our own sort of test records to walk through the process of making an exhibition record, linking our objects to it and doing some of that workflow. So that is what we have on today's agenda. But before we start talking about archives, I would actually like to start with a search function that we didn't get to yesterday in our afternoon on searching. So I did not quite have time to get to the search by location option in objects. So I just want to quickly cover that. So when we want to search by location, we'll access that option within the same search function here that we were using yesterday for our basic search and our advanced search. So we will see this third tab here for search by location. When we click over to this tab, we have the option to search by current location. So looking for objects that are currently in whatever location we will select here. Home location, which of course would find objects that are assigned to whatever location we decide here as their home location. Or history, which would then look for objects that have been in this location at some point in their location history. So those are the three different options here for searching by location. Kind of like when we're looking at, Query Designer over here, we can't just freely type in to this field. We have to come over here to this location lookup icon here and click on that, and that will actually open that same location authority that we were using yesterday and when we were moving our objects and doing those inventory records. So we'll click into that and we get our location lookup. And from here we can browse, we can also search, right? We were using that search yesterday. So I can find one of our locations here and select it. And you'll notice that, I don't have some of those options that I see when I'm in my advanced search, when I'm in Query Designer, right? I'm not able to do the show record count or add some of those other options on. But I am able to apply filters here if I need to. Amazon Workspace blinked out for a second. Here we go. Looks like it's back. So remember when we were talking about saving queries yesterday, we did an example in making a filter here. So if you want to be able to kind of put some parameters on this search by location, it can be helpful to make those filters ahead of time so you have them and you can apply them here. So let's look at this in list view. And I'm just going based on current location here. A large record set here. Here we go. We've got 3,600 plus records here in the objects module that are currently in that location of Abe Lincoln. I do want to note, though, that you all have, we talked about this yesterday, that you all have that more sort of precise location information in that sort of location remarks area, that free text field. So if we need to search based on that, we'll actually want to use our advanced search to do that. We have a few field groups in the advanced search that are related to location. So that's where we'll be able to search those fields. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice today. Okay. Does this distinction make sense? The current, the home, and the history? Let's try another one here. Maybe I'll do a couple other searches here. Maybe look at something that is a little more specific here. I think we added Hopewell in here. I can look at visitor center. Maybe I'll look at location history here instead. See any objects that have been in this location at some point. There we go, 22 records in here. It's mostly some test records. This was an extra, additional location that was added during one of our previous training sessions. So that is the search by location function. But again, just want to point out here, as I mentioned, that in our advanced search options, let me just kind of make a new search here. Within Query Designer, we do have several field groups related to location where we're able to search a little bit, more of those fields that are on our location transaction. So I just want to point those out here. We have a field group for current location. If I'm adding a field from here, you can see I have some of those other options here, like the handler, the approver. And I believe it is this current location field that you would want to use that is going to look for that free text field of sort of location remarks that are available to you. So that is the field that you would want to search when you're looking for that sort of more specific location that you all are putting in just in that free text field. In addition to the current location field group, we also have home location down here, and then location down here, which is really about location history. So those three field groups, correspond to what we were seeing when we were searching by location, right? We had current or home location or location history. So those will be useful for you all when you want to get to those more precise locations. Okay, any questions about searching by location? Nope. Okay, we're going to move along then. And we are going to start talking about archives next. And we are going to make some example archive records together here. We can kind of walk through the process of adding records at these different levels. But before we do that, I do want to look at some existing archive records so you can get a sense of how things are migrating over from your previous system. So I have saved a query for us that will pull up some archive records. It's not on the dashboard, but it is available to us here. If we just open up our advanced search, go to the advanced search tab, and click into this query dropdown, that's where we will see those saved queries, right? If you have been making queries, if you're making some yesterday afternoon and saving them for yourself, you're going to see your own queries in this list. But you will also see those shared queries that I made available to everyone here. So for this example, we're going to look at training archive objects, Abraham Lincoln's Boyhood Home Incorporated Collection. And I'm going to just launch that saved search here. And let's go into one of these records, this first one here, in our data entry view. Now keep in mind, as I've been saying, we have the objects module, and within the objects module, we have really three different types of records that we're working with. We have our custody objects, right? Those records for accessioning or receiving objects. We all made one of those first day of training. And then we're able to add those cataloged objects, so sort of individual records from within that custody record. Right? We made that custody record first, then we went in and started adding our individual cataloged object records. In addition to those two types, we have archive objects, also in the objects module. So that is what we are looking at now. So keep that in mind, those three different types of records that are all part of the objects module. So we can recognize this is an archive record based on the banner at the very top, our record banner. So it's always going to say archive here if this is one of those archive records. Similar to, custody, we'll see the same thing. We see the word custody right up here in our record banner. Just going to resize this a little bit. And since these are, slightly different type of record, we're actually going to have different data entry views and a few different options, in our record hierarchy than we have seen when we've been looking at, those individual catalog records where we've been spending most of our time during training here. So here is an example of one of our archive records. Again, we have this data view at the top, kind of a view only, read only summary of some information. And then as we keep scrolling down, we will see more of these individual fields for our archive records here. So we have our title, some alternate numbers here. Dimensions, and I do want to mention here that we have a specific dimension element that is designed to be used with archives. It's this archives dimension element. So when we are making our archive records in a minute here, we'll add some dimensions and see how that works. Some of your custom fields that are coming over here related to extent and dates here. Constituent links, there's that object-related constituent role here. Processed by, and then some nice big text entries down here. History, expansion notes. A nice long summary here. Just some example text that's been entered here for scope and abstract. So all of these fields that we're seeing right here are those text entries that we have been using and interacting with in other types of records, right? Whenever we see text entries, we can use them really the same way, right? We're using that plus icon. We have those options to add in a date and an author and a language and all of that sort of additional data about the text that we are entering. So these would function the same way. They're just in a different type of record here. And let's just expand these additional sections down here, additional information. We have some attributes here. And then several long free text fields here, provenance, notes. And let's look at the finding aid section. I think these are all some sort of single value text entries here. So these text fields that have those formatting options on them. And I want to note, looking over at our record hierarchy over here, we know that we are in the collection level archive record here. But underneath that, in descending, we'll be able to access those other sort of sub-levels of our archive records, right? So that's where we will see the series, and then we can kind of keep going in within series, into a file, into an item. And we will also see the custody records that this archive record is linked to here, down at the bottom, this custody objects section here. Let's just scroll back up here. And let's look at that descending order. So this summary that we're getting here is actually going to be this number here is going to be all of the records that are linked to this collection or within that hierarchy of this collection, right? So we see 149. When we first expand it, we just see these three series. But of course, those three series are going to have things underneath them, file units and individual items. So that number at the top is sort of the grand total that we're seeing related to this collection. And we can actually, click into one of these series nodes from here, and we're actually going to really see that record in our data entry view over here. So we don't necessarily have to, open it up and move to that record. We can actually access it just from within here, staying within this collection level. And actually, Stephen, I did have a question for you. I saw before we had different data entry views for like collection level, series level, file unit, and item. Did you just want to use this one that's kind of applicable for all levels here?
Yeah, so we were reviewing those, and all four levels were effectively the same, and it was more efficient to sort of pull in the one or two fields that were different into the one level, into like the one data entry view, than have four that were very redundant.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. I noticed that when I was looking at this earlier this week. I was like, oh, maybe that'll work for training just fine to have one data entry view for the different levels here. And of course, I can expand my series over here and see the file units within that. And you can see that I can, as I mentioned, I can actually edit this file unit level record right over here without having to move between my records here. One second. I'm getting an alert. I got kicked off my VPN. I'm just pausing my screen share while I get that back. Okay, we are good. We're back. And let's expand this file unit here. Maybe there are some individual item level records underneath here. And my understanding, based on your workflows, your existing workflows and what you did in ICMS, was that you all would have to actually create one of those sort of individual catalog level records before you were able to make the archive records. Is that correct?
No. So
okay.
On the migration side of things, the catalog archive, the CR archive record, and if this makes absolutely no sense to you, you can probably ignore me. But for all the people in the class, that record will migrate over as a collection, as a normal object record. So if you looked for ABLI 796, you would find one without that _001. To link them together and make the numbers unique, we appended that series file unit onto the end, and you see it like that. Going forward, there won't be any need to have that collection level or the catalog level, the catalog record version of the archives record.
Right.
All exist in the same database. So we'll be able to create the collection level record and go down from there.
Okay. That was I was going to explain that to you. Like, oh, you don't have to make this catalog record, but it sounds like that was just about migration. So yeah. I think we're good here. Okay. So we'll talk more about that when we get into making some archive records in a minute here. So here we go. I expanded my file unit over here, and I can see I have some individual items over here. And if you're like, oh, this is really tiny, it's really hard to see this, you can actually rearrange, kind of resize your record hierarchy panel over here if you kind of click into this vertical line here and drag it back and forth. So that might be particularly helpful when you're kind of getting into all of these different levels and digging in further and further. So now we're looking at that individual item level record here. There's not too much on this one. Some notes on the paper. Okay. So again, we are still kind of in that top, we haven't moved away from that first record that we opened, that collection level record, right? But within the descending, we can open up the series, we can open up the file unit, we can open up the item, and we can kind of keep doing all of that tunneling in without ever leaving this first record that we opened here. And we can do our data entry over here on these individual level records without having to move over to them necessarily. Okay. If we click up into the descending here, we're going to see a list of all of those records, right? The series records, the item records, all of that. And that's actually what is pulled up in my search here too. It's all of those individual level records. Okay, I'm going to click back into the top here. Any questions about how things have migrated over here and being able to kind of access those different levels? We are going to go through making our own records, but just before we move on to that, I wanted to see if anyone had questions coming up in the chat.
There is a question on the finding aid. I'm seeing if I can grab one off. I'm generating one now, and I'll see if I can get it over into the chat.
Oh, the finding aid report?
Yes.
Okay, I believe that one is still in the works a little bit.
Still a little bit in the works. We're mostly done with work, pass at it. I'm kind of generating one now.
Okay. And I did know when we covered reports the other day that we do have some that you'll see when you go to generate a report here that are still kind of in the works, under construction. So you might not be able to fully generate all of them if you're getting like an error message or something. It's just one of the ones that is currently being worked on. I see a raised hand. Go ahead.
Hi. So for background, archaeologist here. If we have a collection, say, of like multiple objects that we've recovered, we also usually have a catalog entry for a report, a project sort of like, this is what happened, this is what we found, which is like considered a museum record because it's associated documentation of the project. So we would create a catalog record for that archival component, but we wouldn't like go into the archives module in mcms and go obviously this deep into, stuff like that. It would just only go folder of like report or the folder of photos and stuff like that. So in mcms, will we, for like say an archaeological report, is it required? Like what goes into an archival module versus an object record? Can an object record just be a report for that object module, or does it have to go into the archive section? Does that make any sense?
A little bit, but I also feel like this is a bit more of a sort of internal question, how you all decide to use things, use the tools and types of records going forward. But I am curious, do you have like an example record that you can, give me the number and I can look it up and we can see how it looks here? For one of those sort of catalog level records that you're talking about.
Maybe. I don't know if you guys have any like APA records already uploaded, because I haven't seen any of those on those drop downs because it's wave 2 migration.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out, I don't think I have any numbers with me on hand.
Okay. And then what was the unit?
APA, I didn't see it because I think it's wave 2.
Yeah, I don't see it here either.
Yes, and those are just the ones that we are the repository for, so I don't have any parks here that have any archaeological projects that are in wave one that you could look at as an example.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Stephen, do you have any input on this question? I do feel like it's a little more about your workflows.
Yeah, so I will check into that. My initial take is that you can use the archives, like as an archives record, it would show up. You just sort of make that top level, where it's that top level collection level record and have it from there, rather than make a catalog, like a regular quote unquote object record for the archives material. It's not a separate module the way it is in ICMS. It's all sort of integrated into one database. So the archives records are this setup. And we could set something else up, but then we end up with sort of bifurcating our archives and what gets cataloged where and how gets, I think, excessively confusing pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a workflow thing. It sounds like you are mostly just going to be using these archive level records, like at that collection level, to do that sort of cataloging rather than having those separate catalog records. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will follow up on that. I will ask internally, folks.
Does that answer your question? I think that was Haley that was asking that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, some of you went.
Oh.
Go ahead.
There's one more question. Someone's not seeing the record hierarchy.
They're not seeing their record hierarchy. Did they maybe collapse this little panel over here? Because you can kind of collapse the record hierarchy using this vertical line here. Whoever that was, please try going over to the left side of your screen and you can click on this line and that should pop your record hierarchy back open. Who was it that was having that issue?
Marianne?
Any luck now? Just want to make sure
no.
you're able to see it.
You don't see that gray panel on the left side at all?
Hey, no, I'm not seeing that gray panel at all. I went back to the advanced search and pulled up the archive records again, and it didn't pull up. Oops, now I'm resizing.
And you're looking at the data entry view, you're not like in list view or something else?
Okay, remind me data entry view.
Yeah, so when we open our records here, if you're looking at my screen, sort of in the top right, we have those three different view options that we talked about on day one.
Right.
So data entry is the one we want to be in to look at these sort of individual records here. That's where we'll see the record hierarchy.
Right, but I'm not seeing that at all.
Are you seeing like the rest of what I'm seeing on my screen, like the sort of core record information over here?
No, I'm seeing a list view, but I can't open the records.
So you are on the list view like this, like on my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so if you can you move to...
I'm not seeing the TMS collections banner at all.
Could you grab a screenshot real quick and stick it in the chat?
Okay.
Easier to.
And if we can't figure that out, I can even have you kind of share your screen so we can take a look at what you're seeing.
Give me a second.
No worries.
Hey, I've got a colleague here with me, and she's somehow that top banner part had collapsed. So we've got it open now, and I am.
Did you click on that horizontal line?
Yes.
That can hide this top section.
Yeah, I don't. Okay. Anyway, thank you. Sorry to hold up.
Yeah,
the class.
no worries. Are you good now? You're able to see the record hierarchy over here and everything.
Nope, I still don't have the record hierarchy.
Okay. Were you able to move to the data entry view? from the list view?
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Got it? Okay, great, great. I should point these out again, just if anyone else is having some of these navigation things. So this vertical line that's sort of above the record information here, if we do click on that, that will collapse those top navigation banners. So if you've clicked on that and you're kind of not seeing the normal options at the top, just make sure you click on it again to expand that back out. And then sort of the same over here on the left, we can collapse those record hierarchy panels and just bring them back. You know, it's a lot to get used to so much new navigation and different looking screens. Okay, any other questions on archives? Are you all ready? Can we go ahead and move along and make some archive records now? Just want to take a second in case there are any other questions coming up. Okay. So now we've looked at some existing archive records here. Let's go ahead and make a new one here. So I'm going to come up to add a record and go to archive object. And I want to know this is a little different than the process we used the other day where we had to make our custody record first, and then we were able to add in those individual object level records. So from here, when we're working with these archive records, we do have to start making the archive object, and then we can go back to our custody record or make a new custody record and link this sort of top level archive record to that. So that's the workflow we're going to have here. So I'm going to add new record and archive object. And similar to when I'm adding other types of records, especially in the objects module, right, I'll have my department drop down. And I'll be able to put in my number here. Use ABLI. And of course, as I keep doing, I'm going to keep putting my initials in here. And I'm going to call this CO1 for collection here. And when we are making our first new archive record here from the very beginning, from that record banner, we're just able to make that collection level record, right? The sort of initial highest level of our archive hierarchy here. But once we start adding additional levels from within this collection that we're making, we will see additional options like adding a series, adding a file unit, an item. But when we're just starting out, we're starting at that highest level of the hierarchy. And that's also why we are not able to, indicate there's no parent record here. We're making the parent record now. So we'll see different options in the archive level here, and we'll see this parent record filled in once we've made this collection level and start adding those sort of sub-levels to it. Okay, let's go ahead and add that. And I actually have a question for you all about your workflows. I know we all have some custody records that we've made already, right? That's where we've been, we were generating our catalog object records from that. Do you typically have when you acquire archives like this, could they be in an accession that also includes some of those objects, or they usually kind of have their own separate accession records?
They would be in with the objects for us at SEAC.
Okay, great. Because I was thinking we could go on, make new custody records to account for, the accessioning of this archive, or we can use the ones we've already been using this week. So I think we'll do that if you have these situations where you'll have both in the same accession.
I'm sure some people have only archives accessions though that don't have any objects.
Based on units there. Oh, I keep getting kicked out of my workspace for just a second. Okay, looks like we're back. So here I am in my new archive record, right? I'm at that collection level to start with here. So I can pull this up, enter some information on here. Not seeing too much in this summary yet because I haven't done much cataloging at this point. We have this restrictions text entry at the top. So again, text entries, we use this plus icon. And we have a couple options here, restriction notes, or restrictions here. So if we have any restrictions that need to be entered here, we can use this text entry for that. And scrolling down here, let's look at some of these required fields. And if you were, hopefully you're following along, making your own archive record here and doing some data entry, just again, getting used to how we interact with so many of these different widgets and types of fields in the database. So I'm going to add a title here. I'm just going to call this the Henderson Family Collection. And I'm going to have those same title type options, primary title, etc. We can put in that language, put in some notes here and remarks. We talked about this when we looked at this widget earlier this week. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. If I have additional numbers that I need to record on this record, I can add those in here. And I've actually been wondering, do you all have a standard approach for how you number your archive records? I've been looking at some examples, but it was just curious. You see we have some alternate number descriptions here. I'm just going to call this one other number. Okay. Next we have dimensions. And remember I noted that there is a specific dimension element that we will want to use with our archives here. So I'm going to go ahead and use this add element to start here. And in the select element dropdown, I'm going to want to use the archives element. That is designed to be used with archive records here. So it's kind of set up the way we will need to record any of these measurements here for archives. And again, we can put a description, remarks, our method, or our date here if we need to, if we want to record that level of detail here. And creating that element here. And here we got our element of archives, and we have length here and linear feet, and we have file size in gigabytes here. So I can come in and put in my measurements, my numbers here, just kind of making some things up. There we go. We have some of your custom fields down here. Flex fields for extent. Archive dates down here, inclusive and bulk here. So I can just put in some numbers here. I can link an object-related constituent here. So we're interacting with this widget the same way we did when we were linking constituents in our catalog level record. So I use the plus icon, and we can do our search here. Find my constituent record that I made up the other day. I want to assign a role to this. Might say source individual for this one here. Processed by, we put in, I believe this is generally your sort of archivist, cataloger role here. And we can add in a date for that as well. And down here, history, scope, organization, arrangement, all text entries here. I'll just go through the steps of adding some of those here. Different options. And yeah, I think it's generally good to kind of check when you are adding a text entry, to check this text type dropdown at the top, because sometimes we'll actually have a few different options here, right? So this one, it just kind of is labeled as history, but we have history brief note, history expansion note, history object use. So make sure that when you're entering these text entries that you click into the text type and make sure that you're using the right description here, the sort of label for your text entry. Okay, I'm going to save that. And these text entries are set up to display much larger than some of the text entries we've been seeing so far. Right? Usually, it's kind of a slightly smaller box, but because we have so much text often in these archive records, they've been set up to just be a little bit bigger, so you can see more information at one time and don't have to scroll through a tiny little scroll bar to see all of these sort of paragraphs of information here. But this is one of those things that can be customized. You know, as I've been trying to point out whenever we're looking at our data entry views and we see something here, there are a lot of options for how, you can decide how big this looks when your system administrator is really setting up these views for you all. Scope has scope abstract, scope expansion note. So again, a couple options here. And I'm just going to add a couple as we keep going. That organization arrangement has both of those options here, arrangement or organization. Okay. We're doing a little bit of our data entry cataloging here, again at this collection level. We have some attributes down here, geographic name and topic. Let's just click into these and see what some of these values are in here. It's a big long list, I'm sure, that's coming over with your migrated data. And let's just look at topic down here, see what's coming over from that. A lot of sort of individual names here. Okay. And of course, these free text fields that we mentioned, pretty easy to use. Just click in and start typing. Okay, and we have the finding aid text entry, text fields down here. We can add those formatting and then level of control, several levels here. I'm not going to go through typing something into all of them. We've used really similar fields already. I am going to just click down into the archives miscellaneous fields data entry view down here. I think this one has a couple fields that we haven't seen on this data entry view so far. So let's just see what's available there. Here we go, our class 1 field. So we're going to select archives for that. Again, a drop-down list. And we have that class archives attribute here, and then we have that unit attribute down there as well. Okay. And again, as a reminder, our unit attribute here is really about the ownership, the unit that actually owns these items, right? Because sometimes, we might have things that are in a department that is different than the actual owning unit, right? If it's a center or repository or one of those sort of sharing situations. So these might not always match up here. But again, the unit one here that we're looking at right now is really about the actual ownership. Okay. Description, free text field here. These look like extent-related fields, I'm guessing, that are coming over with your migrated data. I'm not too sure what each of these describe here. And then we have some more extent-related fields down here. Stephen, do you know much about what these flex fields are? It's like a little repetitive, so just wondering if people ask.
Admit that archives gets a bit outside of my normal wheelhouse. So,
okay.
And in the Teams chat for anyone on that, it is generally sized. However, it is not consistently used across DOI, so it's not always exactly, it's not always put in a way of like 33 linear feet. Sometimes it's a lot more of a narrative description of it. And I believe the intent from what we've gotten as feedback is that the ideal would be a combination of the two approaches, where there's both utilizing, for instance, the dimensions widget to record sort of that official number of linear feet or gigabytes or whatever,
Right.
so that we can, which is easier to manage and track and process from a data perspective. Having a more narrative extent field that's like 5 boxes divided into 13 folders, whatever.
Right, it's a little more flexibility and, you know, the ability to kind of combine text and numbers and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wondering, because there's like this, we have like a few that are labeled as extent here, so that seems like, you know, there's probably several different types of data coming over.
Yeah, there are a couple of fields kind of moving over. Where you see multiple fields that look like they're doing the same thing, it's because it showed up as multiple fields in ICMS.
And you're just, okay.
That may or may not have been readily apparent on the front end, but they were there.
Okay. That's good to know. I remember, you know, I'm trying to, whenever I see these migration related things and things related more to your previous system, it's good to get a little more context, because people do ask about it in our sessions a lot. So thank you. That's helpful. And we've seen this type of field before. These are these flex field groups. We saw these when we were making our custody level records, all of those like bulk, estimate, and sort of totals of our items. And remember, if we want to use these here, we just have to toggle this little button on the right here to enable this group of fields so that we can then use them here. And I'm just going to put in some random count there. And these, I believe, are just free text fields. Yep. Okay. Object count and object count unit. We've seen these fields before in our object level records, right? We can put in, you know, boxes, cubic feet, linear feet here. So again, maybe a little repetitive with some of the other things that we were entering, but it could be helpful to have, you know, multiple places to put this type of information here. Okay. So now that I have made my collection level record, I have that sort of first starting point in my archive records now. So at this point, since I've made this, I probably want to pause before I go on to do, you know, more cataloging and more, you know, adding in these additional levels. I probably want to pause here and actually go back to my custody record and link it to that before I move on, right? Kind of closing the loop here and making sure that from the beginning I'm going to make that connection between this archive collection that I'm working on and that accession record. A little slow on me, but when it loads here, I will actually move back to my custody record and then do a little search for this archive record from there and link them together. Any questions coming up while we wait for this here? Just getting a little hung up on me. Oh no. Let me take a screenshot of this. Looks like it's related to one of